In today's video, we're going to have a complete guide to building a parser or a scraper using no-code tools. And with the help of tools that I'm going to be mentioning in today's video, you'll be able to build a very powerful and a very customizable parser that can pretty much parse anything that you throw at. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps that I'm going to be demonstrating and building in today's video are going to be available from my Patreon page, and you can get to it using a link below the video. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is what exactly is a scraper or a parser? What is the benefit and what exactly does it do? So here we have a diagram, and what we have here is we have here a website, then we have the tool, and then we have more data that we're getting back. And so the general idea of a scraper or a parser is that it's able to take unstructured data. So pretty much anything that you see on the internet, websites, all kinds of other data that's out there, and turn it into structured data. So for instance, you can get things like Amazon reviews, Google search results, anything and everything out there, any kind of data that you want that's not available in easily digestible structured format. So meaning like there's no data that you can easily import, using a CSV file. You can turn that data into data that you can easily consume, or the app that you're building can be easily consumed. Of course, there's a little bit more to it than kind of what we're showing here. There's some very, very powerful functionality. And you're going to see that as we're going to be building the apps and looking through various tools. But the most important takeaway right now is that you're essentially taking data that's very unstructured and making it into structured that's very, very easy to display and manipulate. Now, the next thing you have to concern yourself with is that, yes, there are various tools that allow you to parse various pieces of data on the internet. There are tons and tons of tools out there, and you can even potentially do it using your existing no-code tools. So if you're using something like FlutterFlow, you can potentially get this data and parse it, but that's going to be a bad idea because you never want to be doing these kinds of complex tasks. You want to be using another tool that will integrate with your no-code tools such as FlutterFlow and give you the data that you need. And so in today's video, I want to show you my favorite tool when it comes to parsing or scraping data. And this tool is called Apify. And this is an amazing tool. It's very, very powerful. It can do a ton of things. And the best part of it all, it's very, very easy to use. So if you thought, hey, parsing all this data, scraping all this data can be very complicated. It's only like for tech people. It's very, very hard. In fact, that's not the case at all. It's actually fairly simple and fairly easy. So right now, let's have a quick overview of Apify. Then I'm going to show you how you can use it. And then a little bit later in the video, I'm going to be showing you a proof of concept no-code app that integrates with this tool and allows you to have an amazing app that kind of does everything, including scraping, parsing, and actually displaying the data. So here we are on Apify's homepage, and I'm actually using a free plan right now that I can do some work with. And so if you're interested in checking out Apify, you do not need to buy a plan right now. You can get started with a generous free plan. But the first thing you guys need to understand is if you click on this home tab here, you're going to see something called actors. So it says here suggested actors for you. And if you click on view all, you will see lots and lots of different actors. Now, what is an actor? Well, an actor is a pre-built or a predefined scraper that's used to get data from a specific website or a specific tool. So as an example, here we have a web scraper, and this is a scraper that gives you certain pieces of data from websites. It's kind of a generic all-in-one kind of scraper parser. Here we have Google search results scraper. Here we have Google Maps. So all of these actors, they are customized for specific websites and customized to get specific data that you are probably interested in. Here we have an Instagram scraper. We have all of these YouTube scraper. Twitter, etc., etc. And you can also browse by categories, right? So I can click on e-commerce, and I'm going to be looking at various e-commerce parsers or actors, which is pretty much the same thing. And so the first thing that you guys need to do is you need to pick the actor that you're going to be using for your specific task. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, we're just going to pick a very, very generic and a very general scraper. And this is going to be this web scraper. So I'm going to click on it. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to create an empty task. Okay, I'm going to click that, and that's going to create an empty task. And now I have a task that has been created from that scraper. And this is a task I can customize to my own like. And here we have our configuration. So this is a web scraper. So it's going to start from specific URLs, right? So maybe you want to get specific content from a website or from, a tool, or you're building a tool that does websites analyzation, right? Analysis of different websites. You're building it for customers. And in this case, you're going to be crawling a website, right? So here you give start URL. And if you scroll a little bit down, you have something called the link selector. And this basically gets more URLs, right? So we have a start URL, but if you go to that start URL, you're going to have more and more links. So that is this Ahref, which is able to get more and more links. And then you have a little piece of code. And this is very, very self-explanatory, because all it's doing is getting a page title, H1, which is that header one, that main header, the first H2, and some random text. Okay, and then it's all returning this. And so what's going to happen is for each web page that it finds and it crawls and it downloads, it's going to give you all of this data, and that's all it's going to do. Okay, so once you take a look at it and you realize, okay, this looks good, this is kind of what I want. Let's say, for instance, I want to parse different pages and I want to get their titles, or I want to get something specific. The next thing you're going to be doing is you're going to click on start, and that's going to start the process. So if I click on start, that's going to run this task from this specific actor. So now it's running. And so this is the main kind of dashboard for my current task, which is getting different pieces of data. And so here we have an output, we have a log, we have our input that I just showed you a little bit before, we have storage, we have all of these things. But the most important thing is this output. And so now we have data coming in. So we have this URL, we have this URL, and if you let it run, it's going to give you more and more URL. So here's another URL it found, another URL. And for each URL, it's giving us like a page title, it's giving us that first header, it's giving us that first H2, etc., etc. So it's going to keep running until it finishes, until it parses all the pages. So we can click abort, and we just want to stop, right? We kind of seen it all, or maybe we're not happy with the data, we want to modify it, things like that. And then on the tasks main page, if you go into runs, you can see that we had one run and it was aborted because we aborted it. And obviously, if you let it run to its completion, you might have multiple runs, different configurations, you're getting different data. And then you can click on each of these runs and you can take a look at the output, right? So you can view this output as JSON, you can download it. That's kind of what you want. You want the output. And obviously you're going to have the exact same behavior for all of these actors. So regardless of which actor you pick, whether it's an Instagram profiles, YouTube, Twitter, you name it, right? You're going to have that exact same flow. You're going to pick an actor, you're going to create a task out of it, right? With your own custom data, with your own custom information. And then you're going to run that task and you're going to have different runs. So these are the most important concepts when it comes to Apify. This is something that you have to understand, and it's fairly straightforward. Now, what makes Apify super powerful and extremely useful for our own personal use case here, that I'm going to be showing you a little bit later in the video, is the fact that regardless where you are in Apify, regardless kind of what you're doing, you can access all of this data using an API. So it's not just, you browsing, the tool, you're looking at the results using the web interface. So here I am looking at all my runs, and I can click on API and I can run this URL here to basically get the same data that I'm looking at right here. So this is going to give me get a list of actor runs, right? So I can get this data. I can go to one of my saved tasks here, right? I can click it And remember, I had one run. I aborted it, right? Well, I can also get a list of that data here using an API. And this is going to give me all the information I need in order to get it from my app. And so let's say I found the scraper that I want to run, this general web scraper that we just ran moments ago. And instead of clicking start here, I can go to this API and I can actually take a look how I can run it using an API. And this means I can run it from somewhere else. I don't need to be in front of a computer and clicking different buttons and kind of browsing the UI. I can actually run it from, let's say, an integration, right? Something like Integromat, which is something that I talked about at length in previous videos, but I can also run it directly from FlutterFlow if I want. So I can take a look, and I have here a run task. I have run tasks synchronously. I have all of these different tasks. Another thing that's nice about it is, let's say I started my scraper and I click on it and I'm seeing a run. Well, guess what I can do? I can actually get data for this specific run. I can actually get the stuff that's coming in, right? This structured data, right? I can simply click here and I can go to an API and I can see, well, I have get dataset items, which is going to give me this dataset items, which is this thing right here, this output, this dataset here. And so this is awesome because not only can I build an app for my own convenience, right, instead of kind of browsing here, but I can also create a SaaS product, right? I can create a SaaS app for customers, could be analytics, some kind of analysis software, SEO software, etc., etc. It pretty much unlimited different possibilities, unlimited things that you can do with it. And so now that you've seen Apify, you've seen that you can control everything using an API. Let's jump into FlutterFlow and let me show you a proof of concept app that I built that allows you to run one of these scrapers and then display data in real time. So here we are in FlutterFlow and I have here an app. And before I kind of show you how it works, let me run this app and let me show you exactly what happens when you run it. So we're going to start it in a test environment. All right, so here's the app, and this app has only 2 pages. And on the first page, we have a big blue button that once we click it, is going to start a new task. So we're going to say start task. We're going to click here, and then we're going to be redirected to the second page. And on the second page, we're going to be seeing the results in real time as they're coming in. So here we are seeing some of the initial results coming in. We see a URL. We see the title here. I'm only showing the URL and the title. We obviously have more data, so we can display more data if you want. And what's nice about this app, it is automatically refreshing every 5 seconds. And after each refresh, we are getting fresh results, fresh data. So take a look at this. And while this app is running, we can actually go back to Apify and we can see that we have a task running. So we can simply go over here, all tasks, and we have a task that's running right here. So if we click that, we have this task with 11 results. We can click on it and we can see the output here as well. So if we take a look, the last output is this crawly HTTP, or right now it's actually browser memory storage. And we go back to our app and we see memory storage browser pool. Now it's utils. We go back here and we see utils and types. And now we see utils and types. So we're essentially seeing the same data that we are seeing here. And this is a working proof of concept that essentially you can start on your own and then you can get this data back and you can display it, and you can display all the data or some of the data that you need. And obviously you can, change this app. You can add more things. You can have a button that says stop, and that's going to abort it, right? Very, very easy. You can click on this API right here and you're going to see abort run, right? So if you were going to build a button that lets you abort it, you can just simply send a request to this URL here, and that's going to abort it right here. Okay, so let me go ahead and abort this manually, this task here. And now that we aborted the task, let's take a look at how this app is built so that you have a better idea of how you can build similar apps yourself. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we are sending API calls. So we need to configure API calls. And so here I am in the API tab of FlutterFlow, and I have 2 API calls. I have a call called start task, which is this call right here. And I have a call called get data task, which is this API call right here. Now, how do I know these calls? Well, it's very, very easy. I can just go back to start. And all I need to do is, navigate to the web page that has the start button where, you typically start these tasks, these runs from this task, and you can click on API, scroll down, and you're going to see a run task. You also have synchronously get data set items. So lots of interesting things. The one I'm actually using is this one right here, but you can probably also use this one right here. This one right here is going to run, but then it's only going to give you data when everything is finished, right? So you might want to use an async task, and that way you can keep displaying data as it's coming in. So the method I'm using is this one, and you can also test endpoint. You can copy it right here. Now, I also have a second API call. This is get data task. And this is where I'm getting data set items, right? So if you go over here and you click on any of your runs, and so for instance, we're looking at one of these runs here, which was succeeded, a different run, I can click on API and scroll down, and I have get data set items. And this is the call I'm making to get these data set items for this specific task. So we have these two calls, and obviously when you run that first call, you're going to be getting a request ID. You're going to be getting some kind of an ID, and this is something I'm saving. It's called a default data set ID. When you run it, you're going to get, so for instance, if I run this again, this is my response here, right? This is my response here. And if I scroll down, you need this default dataset ID. And if you click on recommended, scroll down right here, default dataset ID, I have it selected. This is not a list. You don't have to check this, but you have to check this. So let me go ahead and stop that task there real quick. I just wanted to show you. So if I abort it, all right. So now I save this dataset ID because we need to pass it to the second call. Okay. So the second call, if I come over here and I go into variables, we have this dataset ID, and this is the dataset ID right here. This is where the variable is going to be filled in, where it's going to be replaced with this thing here, with this token of the variable that we are passing. Okay, so now that you've seen the API calls, let's go into the UI. And so here we have two pages. We have the first button here, and if we open the actions here, you can see that we're making this call, and we're checking if it succeeded or not. And if it succeeded, we are redirecting them to the second page, and we're passing this dataset ID that we got. So this dataset ID that we got from the request that we configured in our request part. Okay, so that's the first page. Now on the second page, we have here a list view with rows and two columns. Okay, so this list view is doing a backend query, right? Get data task. This is the second API call, and we're passing this data set ID here. And then we're coming to this generate dynamic children, and we are generating items from the response, because in the response we're just getting one big JSON, but we need to parse that JSON into different items. And this is what this part is doing. It's taking the response's body, and it's giving us an array of items, and it's giving us item by item. That is what you need. You need to do this, because if you don't do that, you won't be able to display the data. So here we have a list view here. And then for each of the items here, we have the first column. I'm just specifying .url, which is the JSON path, because that is going to be the URL. Whereas for the page title, I'm just specifying page title. This is kind of what the request looks like. We have URL, page title. We also have H1, first H2. And these are the things that we're getting back that we specified in the crawler that I showed you earlier in the video. And so I'm only using URL and page title. We can also use H1, first H2. We also have some debug information that we probably don't really need to use unless we are, experiencing some errors, some issues. But for the most part, you only are going to be using these things here, the things that we configured in our task, in our actor that we're using. And so in this case, I'm only using page title and URL. And as a result, I basically have a list of different information from every single page that it parses. And if you let that task run to its completion, it's gonna, I think, run like, it's gonna have like 50 results or something like that, which means it found 50 pages, and it's gonna give you data for those 50 pages. And so that is how you display your the results here. But there's one more thing I'm doing, is that when the page is loaded, okay, I'm basically I have an action here on page load, and so I'm waiting 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds, and then I'm refreshing the page. So it's just a mechanism to refresh the page and send that new request. Okay, and what's nice about it is that we don't need to do anything else. We just refresh the request, and that request is gonna have more information. So that is a little trick, a little life hack to kind of display this data. There are many other ways of kind of doing this, but that is the simplest and kind of easiest way, and it kind of sends the message across. And so that's a quick proof of concept that you can easily build, and let the user start a task and then have them see the results that are coming in from that task. And obviously that is just scraping the top of the surface there, because there's so many things that you can do. You have so many different scrapes, and most importantly, you have an API that you can invoke that will do everything that I can do on a website, right? So I can start a task, I can abort it, I can get the data, I can get different pieces of information, I can do all that. And so as a result, you can do amazing things, right? You can easily build a SaaS app for your customers, for your users, that maybe does website analysis, something having to do with SEO. You can check if their links are correctly. You can do so many things, right? You can do amazing things. You can find unstructured data on the internet, like public domain data, and sell it as a CSV download, or sell it as some kind of an API. There's so many things that you can do. Apify is a platform, right? Apify is a product, but you have to build an app on top of it that integrates with it, right? And obviously Apify is meant for developers, just like you and I, people that build apps. It's not really meant for end users. And so there's lots of people building all kinds of interesting apps. And if you combine it with some AI functionality that I talked about in some of the previous videos, you can build some very incredible and very impressive apps here. Here you have a platform that allows you to do it. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to your imagination, how far you want to take it, and what exactly you want to build with this amazing platform. Now, if you're watching this video and you're thinking to yourself, well, this sounds very interesting or intriguing, and who knows, maybe I want to build a product that does some kind of data manipulation, takes unstructured data, converts it into structured data. Maybe I want to sell that data as CSV. Maybe I want to create a monthly subscription, some kind of a SaaS product. Maybe I want to build a website analytics service, or I want to build some kind of a website, analysis or something like that. So many different things that you want to do. And you're interested in building a business with no code. Maybe you want to build a software company, or maybe you're a, one-person team. You want to build your own little micro SaaS. Then you definitely want to check out my Patreon community, because not only will you get access to this proof of concept app that I demonstrated here in today's video, but you also get access to pretty much all the apps that I built with FlutterFlow, as well as some of the other app builders. But that's not all. You also get access to some extra content, such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, as well as my exclusive masterclass series, where we do a deep dive on a specific topic that the community votes on. And so if you are really serious about no code, or you're not sure about how something works, you have a question, then you definitely want to check out my Patreon community and consider becoming a member. You will see a link to it in the description below the video. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more of these kinds of videos where we are building apps that deal with third-party services, integration, APIs, things like that, check out the video you're going to be seeing in the corner of your screen. I am more than certain you're going to find that video very valuable.